down because he has a lapel, and so his voice will be all over the place. Please don't forget today, 6:45 for the bus, just outside here. And I really mean it because 4 years ago we left so many people behind, and I felt terrible that they did not know what to do. So that's why I'm very concerned about it. I'm also, you have this week as young artists, most of you, 99% of you, do you have your time to practice. We will have only 3 master classes, and then after that, it will become very, very busy with performances, and also the first performance you have is actually on the 2nd of June, which is on Monday night in the Van Cliburn Concert Hall. Some of you already know you're playing. So use this time well. And we, for the first time in 46 years, at the initiation of Dr. Young, who is the executive director, you will have a day off, which I never gave before. So if you want to go to the, we will talk about that also, if you want to go to the zoo, or if you want to go to one of the most incredible art galleries, museums we have in Fort Worth, we will organize something, or we will tell you what to do. But a day off is also welcome. It makes you feel refreshed and start again. So without further ado, this is an incredibly great pleasure of mine, because John Nakamatsu, I remember back in the old days, I know he smiles, in 1997. And by the way, this is incredible because for some reason the stars are aligned, because the 2 other persons coming in to do recitals, Avram Rechat and Jan Jiracek, are also during that year. They were number 3 and number 4, and John was number 1 in the competition in 1997. So it's somehow a reunion of the fantastic competition. And John has been here before, but I took advantage of the fact that he's here as a jury member to do this fantastic masterclass. I know he's listening, so I can tell him that one of the most unforgettable experiences I had in 1997, because I attended everything, I still do, was his performance of the Stravinsky Etude, Opus 4, which I don't know if you still play, but a little bit. But it was just stunning in all ways, but of course other things. So please, you have his bio in your booklet, not that it's essential, but you can get it everywhere. Please give John Nakamatsu a warm welcome for the first masterclass of the festival. Thank you.
Great to be here. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for being at PianoTexas. I look forward to hearing you all and meeting some of you. And you're probably coming to the competition in the coming weeks, and that'll be very exciting too. So I guess we have a Beethoven first. Is that here? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before you start, let me just find a seat. Do you mind if I sit here? Let me just run off and get a pad, since I don't want to mess up your iPad. Let's take some notes. All right. Your name? What would you like to play? I can play the whole thing. Okay, why don't you play the whole thing? I'm putting my phone here just to kind of help keep myself on track time-wise. Let's find the beginning of this. So you do many things very well. And is this a new piece for you, or is this an old piece for you?
I've been playing it for a year.
Been playing for a year? Have you played it much in public or in concerts? Or?
Well, I played it for our school spiritual competition.
Mm-hmm.
Then I played it for my senior recital. And then I played it for my audition.
Okay. Well, so you've had a lot of experience playing it. And I think one of the things that, maybe I'll talk generally first, and then we can kind of go through it and specifically see examples of what my main points are. Because we won't have time to just really delve into all the detail. But one of the things that I think is difficult is to imagine what it is like to play in a space like this versus, you know, our practice rooms or our living rooms or wherever you spend the most time practicing, which are very different acoustical spaces. And so many of my comments kind of relate to the difference between hearing something in a very closed environment where everything is very dry and immediate and you hear extreme clarity to something like this where things can get more swingy. And that has implications on dynamic, tempo, pedal, you know, everything that you do has to be about, you know, preparing to play in a hall or a different acoustical space. And I think the only thing that's going to really help you as the one guiding factor is your ear. That you're always thinking about what it is in the hall that we're hearing. Not necessarily how you're used to playing, because I think, you know, we practice in a way and we just kind of get on the stage and try to play the way we practiced, you know, instead of really thinking, you know, what happens if the hall is like this? Or even worse, what if you're in a giant cathedral and there's this 4-second reverb and you have to play, right? Instead it's gonna, everything sounds like that. You know, what are you gonna do? Some things you can't help, but some things I think you can. And one of the things that's really important in this piece, just as important as the notes, are the silences. Because I think the silences are really, really, really a part of the drama. And most of the silence, I think you treat as mathematically correct, but not sonically correct. So that's a difference. You know, the mathematical calculation is how we understand the distribution of beats in a bar, but it's not necessarily how you're going to understand the procedure of playing it. So let that be two separate things in your head. The other thing is just the concept of resistance, meaning that you play so well. There are things that you play that just sound so easy. I love it. It's great. You have an incredible, even in your left hand, you know, all this stuff that most people struggle with. It sounds so fluid and easy. But I worry sometimes that it sounds almost too easy, that there's nothing pushing back on the speed. Like because it's, I mean, obviously you've worked on it and it's very fluid, but it feels like it's almost always moving forward and that it's easily moving forward. And that, just think that if it's water and you are, and the water is being held back by that dam, that the water is pushing on this dam, you know, and there's tremendous pressure on this dam. The moment you open it up, the water just flows and there's no pressure, right? There's no tension. And so I think in many places, you've kind of opened the dam and just let the water flow through, and there's no feeling of difficulty or struggle or pushback. And I think that's true for the second movement as well, that it just sounds so, that these 16th notes just kind of easily go by. And I think there's something to be said, you know, for always creating tension by holding things back. It's like, you know, when you swim, when you're in the water, if you do this right now, there's nothing resisting you. I mean, there is, but there's, you know. But if you do this in water, do you feel like you have to do that? And often you have to go, right? You start somewhere. So those kinds of laws of physics are very useful in imagining how you push into something or feel it pushing back at you. So that's another concept that we'll, I think, talk about. How often now, I mean, one of the other great things is that you're so secure in everything. I mean, you seem confident. I don't know how you feel, but you seem confident. Yeah, exactly. But and you seem to not have any trouble memorizing. So now that you have this, how often do you practice with the score in front of you?
Probably more often than I should.
More often than you should?
No.
Less often than you should?
Yeah, less often.
That's probably a better, yeah, because I don't think you can ever do more often than you should.
No.
Especially when you have, I mean, this level of, you always can practice from memory. That's not an issue. But I think that another thing, just generally, is that you're not really getting everything that Beethoven writes. I mean, details of note lengths, that are very, very important, or dots, or where slurs actually end. Sometimes you break it off before the slur ends. The other thing that you might think about, especially in Beethoven, but in all music, is that the principal dynamic should go through the entire period. Meaning that, imagine, before you change something, what is it like, meaning that the forte goes from here all the way to the next dynamic marking, which is here, right? So that whole period is forte, but if you go bum, ba, we're somewhat out of that forte, right? So I'm not saying there aren't different levels of forte. I mean, just imagine forte is a wide dynamic, right? You have a range. But at some point, the way the hammers are hitting the strings, it doesn't sound like a forte anymore. It sounds like you've gone into a different level. So just think that no matter how you vary it, it still has to have the spirit of the principal dynamic. And that'll help guide you through things. Because I think also some things, once you start playing by memory, we start to forget all the details. So, and that doesn't mean that I want you to start at the first note and read the whole movement. That's not what I mean by using the score. It means that, like, practice 2 bars, practice 1 bar, practice 8 bars, and just look at it and try to realize what's there, and then maybe contextualize it. Because if you start just reading the whole exposition, by the end you're not even going to be paying attention anymore, just because that's how our mind works. So use it as a tool to really get into the detail, but don't let it be like, oh, I have to read it once from the score and then I have to play by memory. That's not enough. So let it be a guide to examine detail. Let's now go into just a little bit. So let's take even the beginning. One of the other difficulties of the sonata is that as many expressive markings as there are, there's no real indication of what the tempo should be, right? That's the hardest thing. And so your edition very, very nicely translates this big German thing into English with liveliness and feeling and expression throughout. So, and I think you certainly have the liveliness part. It's lively. It almost might be too lively. And the thing about the translation is liveliness in English kind of means we like speed, like it's fast. But this Lebhaftigkeit in German is more a term of life, not of like go forward. So this is, it's like with like a sense of a zest and very, 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 very focused on feeling and expression. And I think, again, this is where the resistance plays in. It's just too fluid. It's too easy. So I wonder if you could even just open this and think of the space that we need a little bit more room to hear note lengths, to hear your intent. Just do the first, what is it? To the 3rd bar. So if you go, what's interesting is that your hand looks like it's doing exactly what it's doing the 8th note and the rest, but your pedal is slightly behind your hand. So it's like, that's what I hear, instead of bam, right? So again, think of the hall. Okay, second thing is it's not only just about how you space the time, the rest or make the silence, but it's about the clarity of your intent. So I hear, which is a very global kind of chord. If you wanted to make it sound a little bit more directed or focused or clarified for us out there, what could you do?
Maybe take some time before.
Take some time before what?
Before the chord.
Before the downbeat.
Right.
Okay. What else? What could you do just in terms of the sound? It's kind of a big, muddy sound. So it's not only that things last long, but in a space like this, things kind of coalesce. So what do you need to do better?
Maybe bring out the top.
You need to voice better, exactly. You need to figure out what your primary voice is and give us just that much more direction. Just play the chord, just play the two chords. Good. Now play those two chords kind of in a forte dynamic. Just the two chords. Go ahead. The other thing is, what's really important is that you show us from the very start what the meter is. Where does the actual first downbeat start?
Second chord.
The second chord. And yours sounds like bom, bom, like they're completely equal. A pickup usually indicates what? Up, right? Like the German word for pickup is Auftakt, which means like up bar. Like, so it's up, down. That's what the downbeat is, right? I mean, you don't have to accent it, but you have to first feel it. It can't be bom, bom, because that's a little too fat, for our whole. Try it again. Could you make the eighth note different than the quarter note? Okay, if you played in your practice room, that might sound okay. It still sounds a little heavy for here. Okay, better. It almost needs to be shorter. Okay, can you now make it sound like a forte? Not louder, but that there's more intensity. It just sounds a little, it sounds too friendly. It sounds too relaxed. If an orchestra were playing this, they wouldn't go, bum, bum. If the conductor saw you go, bum, bum, da, 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 he'd probably be like, what does he want from the orchestra? Try. Already better. Okay, so we're not going to spend all 45 minutes on one chord, but that's already a little bit better. Now, can we notice? That's a quarter note. What is this?
Rest.
That chord.
Oh,
Yeah, that is an eighth note, right? So those are the kinds of differences that I think you really need to examine and figure out, how am I going to show that? So all of this, I think you're also practicing probably too quickly. So expression and control and that type of musical understanding needs to be practiced very slowly. So let's do these 8 bars or whatever until here, really slowly. And we're going to think of all those things that we talked about, plus now it's forte, it's piano, but look at all of the note values and see if you can hear a difference and see if you can hear the rests. So one thing that I heard right away is that both this and this are the exact same length. But an eighth note is half a quarter, right? So it probably also indicates that at least that little detail is not finished. It's not bum ba da da yum, bum ba da da yum. They're not independent of each other. There's kind of a continuation, and there's maybe a little bit of a break here, and then it happens again. Right? So try it again. Are there any swells written into this part? Are there any hairpins or any change in dynamic besides the principal piano and forte?
No.
No, but what I hear is so you're adding something that's not quite there, right? So can you try it where it's just bigger? So the other thing is that sometimes when you have too much little stuff going on, it dilutes the big idea, which is the contrast between forte and piano. Because you're kind of expanding your piano and it gets into a loud, it feels like it's trying to push into a different range. So can you feel that slur, but maybe not expand the volume? Good. We're getting faster. Slowly control everything really slowly. Good. So it's getting better. Just make sure that is connected. Not dum da bum bum or dum dum ba bum bum. You're kind of taking a break in the slur, and you have to really work to da da dum ba dum. Right. So last time, don't look at your hand. Look here. Look at all of that detail. Then we're going to go on because we need to. And then, this is a big pause, right? So you're gonna need some time there. But that's the first period, I would say, and then the first period of the entire utterance. So as you work to refine it, you might think, well, sounds too raw or too unsupported. You can change, the color of it a little bit, but if it's too short for you, you may need. But those are the kinds of refining ideas you have, but you still need overall to work for the fact that this is an eighth note, that's a quarter note. It's continuing, you can work it into the idea better. Okay. Let's take this. Can we start here? And again, just think of the dynamic period going all the way to the end, the last note in that period until the next dynamic is written. Let's do it slowly. So I think you're coming down too much. I think you're almost making a diminuendo. That's kind of what I hear. Can you make this a big gesture within forte? And this is the accent, which you're doing well. But this also has to maintain a ferocity that it doesn't have. Even those chords, it feels round and friendly, There's yum, yum, bum. They're eighth notes, they're not quarter notes. Can you make sure, do it one more time, that you will not shortchange any rest? Like, bum, bum. Like, every rest, even like full value plus. Your left hand just goes away. Can you just hold this all the way until it comes off? Be careful with the pedal. You don't want to blur it. You can color it, but don't blur it. Can you try that? because I want to just get. Can you play there? Good. Okay. Is there a reason why you really stop on those downbeats?
You mean,
Yeah. Why do you do that?
So you're saying it should be,
I'm not saying anything. I want to know why you do it.
because I think there's a chord change, so I wanna present it.
Okay. See, that's a good reason. I think you can do that maybe without making it so obvious. Like it's very almost like beat over the head, like listen to this. You know, so and really the only indication that you have that it might be a little bit more, it's like be in the context of what's going on, because there's something to be said for you know, without interrupting. Sometimes when you interrupt, like this perpetual motion kind of thing, you break again the tension, right? Like you've kind of made it almost a little too easy. Let's back up just for context. Can you try that? That's just for kicks. Try it once where you don't do that. You only do it with the dynamic. Look, you have like a pianissimo, one bar of crescendo, the forte, fortissimo, and then this. Let's try to not show that bar line as much. Yum, bum, bum, bum. The other thing is when you do this, don't go yum, bum, 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 bum. You're rushing the second beat. It's a little better. It's still, I think your habit is to go, but the other thing that it starts to sound like, it starts to sound a little sentimental. Like, yum, dum, and I think that's the wrong impression. Yum, bum, right? Like an orchestra would never go, yum, bum, it would be too hard to coordinate that. But, I mean, it's exciting, and yum, bum, right? And then you have a real setup for that. Really be careful. So again, this is a case of resistance, and where you need to feel the resistance? Actually in your left hand. Like don't play it. You might think play on the back of the beat. Don't. Right? Can you try one more time, just to feel like you're pushing? You want to push forward, but the music won't let you. The other thing I think that makes it sound so easy is like bum bum yum bum yum bum. I would almost think yum bum yum bum yum bum yum, especially if you're thinking that this is kind of expanding, you know, like expanding in just scope, right? It's getting wider. Can you one more time? Now, can this, that's exciting. Can this also now feel like it's one, not super fast, like kind of nervous, like that kind of nervous. And I think part of it is that the way you pedal, it's, your pedal is kind of overall, I would say black and white. It's either on or off. And a lot of times when you clear it, when you're doing this, you're bringing the dampers all the way down every time. So what that does is I hear quarter notes. I hear I don't hear and so sometimes your hand can be doing the right thing, but your foot is actually creating this extra wave. It's like every time you're clapping the sound off and having to start again. So in a very short period of time, you're going bum, 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 where really it should be like this. So can we just do the left hand really slowly, just by itself, and listen to how you pedal it. Like I don't want to hear pedal changes on the beat. What can you possibly do? How about just for now, just to practice. Okay, what are you doing that's different?
I switched it on semiquaver before. I changed it on the D.
Okay, so you're changing it on this last note.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Earlier, but not so much it.
Okay, let's try something else. So another way to do it, what if you change it later? Almost like you play the next thing and then change it. That's another, which is harder because then you might lose the bottom. What if it were slightly drier? Now I'm starting to hear groupings. So if it's the slightly drier version and you don't want the groupings, what can you do with your foot?
Maybe like half pedaling?
Half? Okay, try that. That sounds pretty much the same to me. What would be another option?
No pedal?
Okay, no pedal. That would be, yeah, when you don't want it, then. No, actually, I think one thing you can think about that just might bleed over to your whole playing is I think your foot is working like a quarter of the speed it has to be. Pedaling is not about kind of these long, like harmonic utterances. It's to give color or not necessarily to sustain things. Like I think too often what we're thinking of is like, well, we're just trying to hold this bottom note and then we don't really care about what the texture is. And that's why it's kind of like down, 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 down. We're pedaling only to take care of one issue. But there is the issue of the bottom note being present, but there also is the issue of just kind of you understanding the 16th notes like in their succession, in their relationship with each other. And because of that, and then there's the issue of clarity, because if you just pedal too much, then it gets too blurry, right? So maybe the issue is to not just necessarily plan it, but to have your foot constantly moving. And that's 90% of how I find myself pedaling, because sometimes it's not really even a conscious decision. I mean, you try many things, but what happens is that you're going to have to adjust it, and often it's a quick adjustment based on just clearing enough or just depressing enough, but no more. So many times my pedal is not all the way down. It's somewhere in the first third of what you can use. And if it goes down to half, that's fine. If it goes down to full. But you know, within the context of. So can you try one version now where you do that, but imagine that you're pedaling every 16th note. See what happens. And that you don't really ever clear it. Like you don't like pedal and release, you know, just you're kind of clearing it. Do it slowly first. Good. Now, can you also, at the same time, when you're practicing slowly, make your hand play as slowly in this tempo as you possibly can. Meaning that you're very tense and you're trying to jump up to the, yeah. Think about all the time you have between the 10th and between the jump back, instead of thinking about getting to the note. Think about the space. Consider the space between the note is greater than what you're actually making use of. You're kind of going, which means that you're compressing. It's like, there should be all 100% equally apart. Think about the space between the 16th notes. That's better. Now let's start to speed Good. Now, the other thing you can do while you're practicing like this is, decide, is it too much on the top? Maybe you can voice it differently. Maybe it just needs to be a little less bright there for what's going to, interfere with the right hand a little bit. Anyway, that's a different point. But I think you're starting to get that. I'm just moving ahead really quickly because I don't want to forget a couple points. We really don't have that much time left. So all of this, I think maybe overall, again, tempo is subjective, but I think part of the reason the whole thing doesn't work as well as it can for me, and I lose some of the drama and the tension, is because your tempo is slightly too fast, especially for a room like this. So, and another motive that doesn't work if it's really fast is this kind of idea of like the fate knock, which is very prevalent in Beethoven. And it's like, I mean, can you knock on someone's door really angrily like that? I mean, I don't know, I can't. so you want to feel like da 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 dum, I don't know what the tempo is, but that's the spirit. And so that's up to you how you solve that, but da 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 dum doesn't have any kind of gravitas. It just feels all so fast. It's all going away too fast. So just also play from the standpoint that we in the audience need a little more time than you do to digest what you're telling us. Just imagine that somebody, like I'm doing right now, I'm just talking at you, and I'm saying a million things. Maybe you might recall one of these things later, but not all. But you need time to think about what somebody's saying to you, right? Because you're not saying it. I can talk fast because I'm just talking, but you would. So, and it's the same thing here. We just need a second more, or a split second more, a microsecond sometimes, just to know exactly what you're doing. Let's jump here. All of these, every downbeat has a sforzando on it. What does that imply to you? How do you treat that?
Practically, I would take a little bit time before the downbeat.
I like to set each one of them
Yeah.
to make an accent. Okay. And what about just the relations? How many are there? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, within a forte dynamic. What does that mean, do you think?
Maybe they have different dynamics. Like some of them are louder than the others.
Some of them are louder than the other. Yeah. One very simple application of this is that in the classical tradition in this type of music, when Beethoven writes repeated dynamics or repeated fortes or sforzandi or accents, that there's kind of an implied growth to that, an implied sonic expansion. So, I mean, I don't want to say crescendo, but I do think that maybe they're not all the same, as you say. But they're probably not drop, get louder, drop, or do this. It's probably one idea, one trajectory that, the thing is, like, so often we're trying to correct what is uncomfortable, and it's like somebody's going bang, and you're bang, 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 and we kind of want to soften it as pianists. Like we don't want that uncomfortable, like someone's hitting you all the time. But actually, that's what makes this music shockingly terrifying, is that the most uncomfortable thing is sometimes what we have to emphasize. So even though it goes against all of our senses to just accent this, accent, 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 if you soften it or it doesn't go anywhere, I think you lose the impact. So think about that also as you go ahead. I do want to do one more thing in the first movement before we get to just really quickly in the last movement. I know we're running out of time. Oh, yes. Can we try? Look at this dynamic. It's so long. It's a diminuendo over possibly, 10-ish, 12-ish bars. That's a really long time. And if it were continually playing, it might be easy, right? Because you can just hear things gradually. But now you have to negotiate all of this between the rests. And I think you might have about 30% of it. But I don't feel like it's one thought. I feel like it's getting softer, but kind of whenever it's convenient to get softer. And then things kind of move up and down, and you're taking these little fragments and treating them as though they're not part of the whole as much. So let's try, this will be the last thing of the first movement. Let's try it from there. And because the diminuendo is so long, what should your first thought be?
To start more.
Start more, yeah. You gotta give yourself room to do this, right? And what's the other implication is the softest thing is at the bottom. So when you start getting softer, what happens? How do you terrace it? How do you best shape this very long diminuendo?
To do more towards the end.
Yeah, so don't lose the intensity early, right? Okay, good. Let's start there. Okay, so I think that can be refined because it still sounds like, and you may have gotten so soft already that I don't know exactly how much softer you want to play. So what you can do is let's do the opposite. So let's take your softest moment, which is what? What is going to be your softest moment?
I think here.
Okay, play that. Is that? Good. Remember also that that might work in your room, but if you are in Bass Hall where there are 2,000 seats, do you think anyone in the top balcony is going to hear it? No, right? Because there's no chord to this. It just sounds like that, and no one's going to hear it. So no matter how soft you get, you still have to hit the string. Okay, so let's just, I heard every note, that's great. There's a little ring to it, it's beautiful. Let's start there and go backwards. So, oh, sorry. Can you now take this one and just make it a step louder?
Oh, sorry.
Good. Good. Now, the next one, go back one more. Step louder. Good. Now go from there to the end. Okay, that's 3. So then you would go back and keep going, right? Like from this, this, all the way to the top, and you'll be shocked at how long that is. But that's another way of understanding how to terrace a long dynamic. Don't do it instinctively. Work it out first, and then you'll start to listen to yourself. So that's the other paradox of practicing, is that we're not practicing to be mechanically so calculating. But unless you feel what it's like to make those sounds and to understand growth or decay, I don't think we'll ever really know, even when we're playing it in context, even when we know it so well, how to completely do it. It'll always just be an approximation, rather than like, I need this much sound to start with, right? So instead of always starting from the top and going back, try the other way. It's the same thing with the crescendo. Start from the loudest possible sound you're going to make, and everything else has to be less. Otherwise, the crescendos get too big too. Last thing, I promise, and we're going to start. So can we also then apply that feeling of resistance to the 16th notes in this movement, so that it doesn't sound like it is so easy to, like the 16th notes just flow. It's not a question of tempo necessarily. It's a question of the rate of how the 16th notes progress. they sound too simple. Think that you're playing this through goo. Like you're walking through goo. Good. How about even more goo? Especially in the syncopated 16th note that I hear the motion. So how about slightly softer in the 16th notes? I mean, gooey but not pedantic. Good. So, okay, something else. Be aware of how often you pause on a downbeat. So let's just do the 16th note. So start from here and go to the left hand. No other voice. For it to not sound like your time has to spread out more organically. It can't just happen suddenly. It goes It often happens between two notes. If you want to, if you want to have a little bit of a hill and a valley, that's fine, but it has to be subtle. And I almost have to not notice it because right now it's just making everything a little bit too rocky, and that's detracting from the long line. So this time, again, listen to the 16th notes, but think about as though you're playing the right hand, but without playing the lead voice without playing the lead voice. So how about when you expand something, think about expanding it over a longer period of time. So instead of going da-da-dum, bum, 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 you go bum, bum, ba, da, 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 da. That the time is, instead of being like at the downbeat or around the downbeat, that you're stretching things out more. So that the 16th, instead of last thing, and then we stop. Yeah, but don't do this. Thank you so much. It's great to hear you. Are we good? Okay. We can go on. Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you. Lindy. Okay. What were you? Okay. this also a new piece for you, or
No, I
No?
don't.
you've had it for a long time?
I mean, I picked it up, it's not like, yeah,
Yeah, great.
I've played it before.
You
yes.
played it before. Okay, wonderful. So, one of the things I think, and how often do you practice slowly?
Very
Very often? Okay. I think one of the things that you need to practice slowly is, as we were doing with the Beethoven, is a lot of times dynamic sequences. Because sometimes I think you know that they're there and you feel like you're doing it, but I think that a lot of times they're not exactly in the right place, or there's, especially in the longer sequences, there could be more of this gradual either building or taking away. One of the things that I think in general you really need to reevaluate with the score is pay attention to the lengths of the hairpins, because this and this piece is so telling. There are sometimes they go to, often like in 2 bars, they will be going to the middle of the 2 bars. Sometimes they peak in the middle of the bar. Sometimes it's 4 bars of just one long swell, you know. So, and all of that is really, really important, because I think it shows you where the goal of the phrase is, or the goal of the fragment is, you know. And so, and that's related also to this general waltz rhythm, which is normally, which in a waltz, what is the most important beat? The first, right? Like the first, it's always 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, the really interesting thing about this is how often he moves the stress. Like it's 1 sometimes, and then sometimes it's on the 2, and then in the most uncomfortable moments, it's on 3. Like where, so look at the beginning, for example. When you first hear the waltz rhythm, it's here, right? Like bum, 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 bum. It's almost like a heartbeat. This is bar, what is this, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bum, 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 bum. That comes from the low bass in the orchestra. Bum, 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 bum. There's not even a 3rd beat, right? It's kind of like yum, bum. Like the 3rd beat is just vanished. So that's how it starts. What is the most demonic expression of the 3rd beat? Just off the top of your head, where is it?
You mean later on in the piece? Yeah.
Where do you think it is? Where is that 3rd beat going to be picked up in the most decisive way?
Like here? Around here? Or even later on?
I think later.
Okay. Then. Oh, no. No, I don't think.
You know, one of the most exciting moments when you listen to an orchestra is where?
Well, then I think it's. Well, around here. But there is no. I don't think there is a third beat here.
Yeah, well, for me, oh yeah. This. Jam, bum, bum, brum, right? That's so incredible. It's 1 bar from piano to fortissimo where the loudest note is the 3rd beat. So, and I only mentioned that because it's so significant, you know, at that point. It's the part that shocks everyone. Right? It's like something grabbed you from the deep and just tried to drag you down. And that can be your arc, where that 3rd beat goes. You know, eventually it starts by not even being there, and it ends up at the most demonic moment of the piece, the loudest note. Right? And so that kind of gives you a sense of the whole development and the importance, of knowing where your stress is on the 3. So those 2 things I think you really need to take a look at just overall in the score when you're studying it. Really pay attention to the lengths and the peaks and the intensity of the hairpins and the beating. Those are 2 general things. And we'll go through and kind of talk about how they evidence themselves. You know, and the third thing in general is that, you know, it's always so hard to kind of say, especially with this piece, whether this was kind of an autobiographical critique of war or of destruction or of decadence. Because to complicate it even further, I mean, it was written over a long period of time. Before the war, after the war, you know, this was the whole gestation of it. And then he complicates it himself by saying, well, sometimes people just make too much of meaning, and that you should glean the meaning, you should just be able to play it off the page. And to me, in some ways, we can never know exactly what was in his head, and people can say all kinds of things, but that he really put value in everything that was in the score. And I think that's the key to Ravel. Debussy to a certain extent as well, but like Ravel, it's like a recipe. Like there's not a bar that doesn't have some type of indication. And so because of that, I think all the details become really important, and I think that can be also a little bit more evident in your playing. So as you go home and if you practice this again and really take it apart, really look at the markings a little bit more, because I think they're sometimes and they're sometimes not. The first time that we get any semblance of rhythm again is bar 5. The problem is I don't hear it. You might feel it. Again, it's clear to you because you're right here, but to us it's not as clear. So what is one thing that you could do?
I think less pedal.
Maybe less pedal. But in order to kind of know what you even want to hear, the way to practice things like this is to take it apart first. So I know there are only 2 real things that are happening, right? Like just those quarter notes and the eighth notes on top of it. And you are dividing them, right? Okay, good, do that. So let's take just the note that you want us to hear, and let's hear how you want to hear them. Good, what about the second quarter note?
Oh, this one?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, the second quarter note. Yeah, exactly. Good, and you hear, you're doing it already. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, now that you have that, add in the A flat. Good, so what is one thing that you hear that's not 100% great?
I think it's not regular enough.
What is it?
Like playing over.
Right. The only thing that's legato really is kind of this, right?
Yeah.
But this isn't. Bum, 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 bum. Because the thing is, again, this is a hall thing, right? Because if you played, even just doing that, it's kind of unclear. And it's even more unclear if you play it in here, and it's more unclear if you use a lot of pedal.
Okay.
So probably for a hall, less pedal, more clarity. You know, and that means you might have to put distance between some of these notes that otherwise, you know, dum, dum, bum, bum, bum. Just by accenting, we'll probably have the perfect length. Good. Now, if in your world you think, well, it's still too short, you just add a little more. You know, that's what you do.
But just a finger, no pedal.
For now, yeah. And you still have to hear, you can't be, you still have to hear. Good. Now, the other thing that could, I think, make it better is to make sure that all of your is exactly halfway between the next note. And not da 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 da. Sometimes it's getting a little, just, you know what, don't let the A flat get impatient. It starts to want to play before it should.
Right.
That's it. Okay, then gradually you can speed it up. But so that's another key, is to make sure that syncopated notes play as late as possible without being late. You know, as late within the time, but still in the time. Yeah, never early. Because that's the tendency. Okay, so that I hear a little bit better. So let's hear that in the context of this, right? So if you start with a whole lot of pedal, I mean, there's not, he didn't mark any pedal there, but if you want some for that kind of swirling, cloudy atmosphere, you can do that. But I think at some point we just need to hear it. The waltz rhythm has to come out of that. Good. Okay. What do you think about that?
Like 2/7 in a way.
2/7, right? It's like pedal, no pedal.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. So now you have to think, what can I do? So what can you do?
Let's start out first.
Maybe less pedal at first, and let's see.
Okay.
Aha. Now we're getting somewhere. Do you hear that? It sounded like something became something else. And that is another general thing that I think you have to think about, is how one thing in this piece evolves or transitions to the next thing. Because I think too often, the transitions for you are very obvious, and there's like, okay, now we're starting a waltz, and that's one's ending, and now we're starting a new one, and now we're starting a new one. Instead of, like, you know, if you hear Strauss waltzes, one section just kind of leads to the next one, right? Like something becomes something else, and then it just goes on to something else, and then the next thing happens. But the orchestras try not to make these big, like, deals about, oh, this one's over, now something else, right? It just is supposed to be continuous because people are dancing. So that's one thing. So the third general thing for you to think about are transitions between waltzes, and even between, in the second half, the fragments of the waltzes. Because you want the fragments to interrupt each other. You want them to kind of, you know, appear and kind of dart in and out, and not be so like, let's show this, and let's show them, we'll slow down, and we'll slow down. So maybe a little less time between things too, unless it's marked. So that's how I would start preparing or re-preparing things. Like when you want to clean things up, sometimes you, even pieces you know so well, that's why I ask you. Because I had this same experience myself, I have it frequently, but things that you play all the time. Like just last season, I had to play Rhapsody in Blue, so I had to take it out again, and then I started playing, I'm like, yeah, I know this. But then, you know, I start really thinking about it, and I was like, you know, some of this stuff probably is getting a little too much, it's getting a little too schlocky or sloppy or not really considered, or maybe even I'm doing too much of something that's really not the intent. You have to take it to the shop and the car wash, and then just wash all the grit away, and then you kind of have basically a clean start. You might have to do that. It might have to go to the car wash several times. Okay. Good. Okay. Let's move into, so now maybe this to that. So this sound to this sound to that sound, right? And you always, you play it slowly, and think about it first. Think about, what do you imagine, like think about the sound before you play it. Like always come to the keyboard with the idea of what you'd like to do, ideally. You know, it might not work, but if you just kind of play it hoping that it'll happen, it might not, right? Just because you get so concerned about the playing aspect of it. Let's come to the idea of like, we are doing this for transitions between patterns. That's what we want. That's our goal right now. No other goal, but smooth transitions. Actually, can you start at this bump, 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 because I want that to this. Too dry, and so maybe this needs to be a little more. You know what I liked you were doing before? You seem to have more of a finger legato there. That kind of
Right,
kind of
yeah.
made the transition there. It was really good, actually. See if you can
Yeah.
find that again. Now let's look at this. Look at that. Let's start by the first hairpin. It's a 1 bar up and 2 bars down, right?
Right, yeah.
So can we do it with the left hand first because it's the moving voice? Let's make 1 bar up and 2 bars down. I mean with the left hand, with the bottom line. Yeah, however you play it. Yeah, don't play this. Don't play that yet. Just play the 8th notes. That sounded like an accent on the down.
Okay.
So let's play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what I want. Better. How about again? Just the bar. Don't do the bar before. Just do this bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Think that on the top it's 1 step up for each of the 6 notes and 1 step down for each of the 12 notes. But the 6 is double the intensity as each of the 12, right? Okay. Yeah, I think you're practicing too fast.
Okay.
Yeah, see that's the only way you're going to get your brain. It's not your hand. It's your brain to think of bum 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 bum. It's just slow it down and really think about it. If you go ba da 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 da, you're thinking like 1 bar. You think 6 notes. No, you went ba ba da 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 da. Don't go da 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 da. The crescendo was good. The diminuendo was not good. Good, do it without me. Listen to yourself. That's better. Okay? Now add the right hand to that. Don't change that. So the one thing that changed is that your left hand kind of gets a little bit influenced by the right hand. I mean, we haven't added those accents or anything. Of course, we're not talking about that. But let's really feel. Let it follow the left hand. That's all. That's the first time that it felt like one thing was going down. Now let's do it a little quicker. In the grand scheme of things, you could decide maybe that's a little too loud or whatever, but you can decide that. That's not, that is the next step, refining it, getting it into the context of the piece. But again, I think unless you break down the dynamic, you really won't know how to make the crescendo.
Okay.
So that's a helpful way of understanding those kinds of things, and then you start to play it within the context of the bars. So you may end up, you practice it, and then as you speed it up, it will naturally start to become a product of the bar because you have the downbeat, yum, bum, bum, bum. So we'll hear a little bit of that, but you'll still have overall better control. Good, okay, let's, just for the sake of these, can we just play from here? Let's do it slowly. Just try to realize exactly where those things are kind of topping out.
So slowly.
Just slowly, yeah. Just for practice. That's interesting. What happened here?
I go lower or no? more and then come back? Or do you think it means
I-
go from pianissimo to piano?
I think these two are the crescendo within pianissimo. These two are the crescendo within piano,
Oh,
right? So always think the principal dynamic governs the general volume level of the period,
okay.
but that whatever happens between that is kind of within that context. So yeah, if you go da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, then you've gone back. You know, you've kind of, at least that's what it sounds like to us.
Okay.
Even if you're not as loud, but I think it's going to the next dynamic. When something is subito quieter, like if this were a forte, you would be doing, I'm sorry, you would be doing exactly the right thing, right? And even the way you did it, it kind of sounds like maybe it was a mezzo forte going to a piano. But you want pianissimo to piano, to something in between, and then back down to only the piano. So those, again, are the kinds of things that I think you really need to look at. Good, can you try that? Here's the last thing. Can you do all of that one more time and don't do it with time?
Okay.
Just let it all be, because you're now controlling the lengths of those hairpins, and that kind of governs the mathematics of those bars, actually. The hairpins do. It tells you where your destination is, like da 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 da. It's not ya da da ya da. That would be twice, right? But it's one. He's uniting two bars. He doesn't want each bar, three in each bar. It's almost like he's looking for 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like this kind of arc. And what he's doing through the whole piece is changing the size of the arc. Sometimes the arc is like this, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's, right? Here's a 2, this is a 2. So can you try it again, and then? I'm gonna go like this, just to make sure we're, but 1, 2, 3. That's, okay, that underlying 3, all the way through, really makes a difference. And I think what messes us up stuff is like those 8s, those pesky 8 bars, right? Where there are 8 notes in a triple bar. We hate that. But what you really, just think of them as, then you really just have to hear bum, 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 as they happen, you know? You can mathematically divide them out if you want, but I think you have the right idea already. Like, that was great, however you divided that out. Do you hear the stability?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because that happens also here, right? Where everything is 8. And I think you kind of lose just the general where 1, 2, 3, 1. And it comes back, it's fine here, but I think you have to hear it here. So can you actually play this, just so that we remember 1, 2, 3, and then you can play that.
Okay, so just left?
No, you can play both. Just, I want you to hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That took you like 2 seconds of your life. I think if you play it like that, we will have the pulse too. That's way more clear. Of course, it's slow. But if you can just, make, and then work on this also as a transition. See if you slow too much into it, we then lose again where the pulse is. So maybe try to do it just with the dynamics and the color alone. And look at, again, what he's doing is he's telling you that over 3 bars, you need to get to this. But that's a 3-bar diminuendo, right?
Yeah.
Do you have that in your part?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. How about, is that okay?
Yeah.
swells, I'll do the top.
Sorry.
You do the hairpins.
Okay.
So the one thing that we might want to hear more is just this. Remember, it's the same thing as the beginning.
Yeah.
Yep. So maybe it becomes lots of pedal, lots of pedal, lots of pedal, to slightly less pedal, slightly more clarity,
Yeah.
right? But that here, the transition, it's not done in time, it's done in texture and, you know, with a stable pulse, but a change of color. So how about like from here, just get to this new sound so that you can go ba, yum, ba. Here's another one of these, right? Is it it's probably right? Because the height of the dim is the loudest part. Just take a lesson from Beethoven. Wherever he starts the dim, it's almost like the highest point of the destination, right? But too often we reach this, and then suddenly we're kind of coming back in the interim. But I think that whole thing is still intense. So here. Steady now. This is great. That's wonderful. But we will not be able to hear your bottom finger because it's too buried in the context. You kind of, I hear more of the top of your left hand and less of the bottom of it. So just remember that if you want to try, just for rhythmic clarity, you want to yum, 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 yum. So let's start by accenting it.
Okay.
And then we'll refine it. Where do you want to go? This one? Okay.
This one?
Anyways, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, that one's fine. Okay, really accent the bottom. I think you're used to playing it soft, actually. Like how you waited because you ran out of notes, right? So that means it's not divided exactly right, okay? So those are the kinds of things to just notice, right? And that'll help you kind of divide it out within the three. Okay, now that's great, but maybe it's too accented for you. So let's go back to put it into a context, but don't lose it. Lengths of the hairpins, and see if you can negotiate that while hearing this. Maybe you don't have to accent it as much because you know where it is now. It just has to be there, and let's really try to make the right hand and left hand illustrate the lengths of the hairpins. here's one last thing, and then we're going to jump because of time. Sometimes these conflict with what the hairpin is, right? Now, how do you do that? How do you, when the hairpin says get softer, but suddenly there's an accent there? Well, one answer is that you accent in the context of the dynamic, so maybe it's a little bit of a softer accent. But you could also do that by just maybe, instead of doing that, just voice it slightly brighter, but quiet. So that the accent is the color, it's not a volume thing, right? That's how sometimes, like, this is at a valley, right? There's a peak here, there's a valley here, so maybe it goes, you do it by just bringing up the D, and not that. Because that sounds almost like it's going to be that, the high point, right? Where you would put it into something where everything's loud. So voicing also helps show accentation or expressive markings. That's another thing that you might look at. Page, okay, we talked about that. Did we talk about this? No. Page 6. Yes, it's the same thing, kind of like, not so much that, but like all of these, right? Do you see how oddly they peak?
Yes.
Can you do these? Why don't you start here and notice those first, and then
Slowly?
yeah, let's do it slowly, the same tempo. Just again, you're practicing. What beat is he at here?
Sorry?
What beat is he highlighting here of the 3 beats?
Well, this one?
Yeah, so it's gone to the second beat here,
Yeah.
right? So it's not so now we're at the second beat is important to him. Remember at the beginning it was 1 that was important. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now it's beat 2. So let's try that. Good. Do that again. That was great. No time. You don't need the sense of that. You just need the left hand gives it to the right hand. So you're doing this. You want to go. You start in the dynamic. You don't restart. That's it. Do it again. You find that. Everyone is different, right?
Yeah.
That's really good. Take a look at all of those things. I think it won't take much of your time actually, because you know it so well. It just needs a little bit of a tune-up. Okay, we don't have much time. Can I see? Oh, you know those giant moments where you have something. So, except, unless that is the shock alone, in isolation, it still has to be a part of the sound bubble that you might say. Meaning that sometimes, because, on this piano, maybe it's just really loud down here, but sometimes it was like crash, less. So it sounds like it's outside of the bubble. So whatever you do, like it's crashing, like the growl should be in that context. Or that has to be less so that there's still room for the growl to grow. if that makes sense. There's one moment where I think it's fine to just kind of be out of the text, but just be aware that most of them sound almost too far away from the context. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah, we talked about transition. Oh, really small thing, but here's another, like, that's another iteration of the hairpin, where it's just over 2/8 notes. What should that sound like?
Well, I think more like an accent
Yes.
on this one.
Yeah, I think it was not a young boy. It didn't have that kind of real 2-bar. Like, it's just a small detail that I noticed. Yeah, on page 14. Yeah, this is another moment where I think there's just too much pedal in the left hand. You can start pedaling with the right hand to connect those, but I think just, again, you have to get back to that. I'm just running through this because we're gonna be told to stop. Okay, 16. Yeah, here's a 4-bar. Can you try this one? First, think the one thing that's very, very consistent are these quarter notes, right? Can you think of them as being the step? That's the guiding step? And it finally reaches that moment. Again, you know, if you need to figure out what's your highest point there, then you might want to work backwards from there. But that's already better. Same thing here. It's like a 3. It's on page 19, and I think this will release that. Yeah, I don't understand my own markings.
Yeah.
So, oh, 19, yeah. Oh, so I think that this doesn't feel like it really got going until just right in here. I wonder if it could all happen more gradually, you know, like that it doesn't have to start obviously at the beginning, but I feel like the motion needs to pick up sooner. So that it doesn't happen in like 8 bars at the end. I think it really pushes at the end and it doesn't get going. Can we just, as our last thing, can we start from here and just go to the climax?
Okay.
Just think that everything's a little bit more.
Normal tempo.
Yeah, this is for tempo, so do your normal tempo. Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like you have a little bit in reserve. Anyway, you can terrace it any way you want, but I think that's more exciting.
Okay.
Because it just feels like it's falling forward and you can't control it. Before it was a little careful for me. Okay, we're gonna have to stop. But thank you so much for playing. It's beautiful. Thank you. Maybe we'll take a 5-minute break so I can drink some water. Okay. I guess I'm always curious, is this a new piece for you too? Yes, good. So do you play the whole thing or just the?
I'm still memorizing the last.
Okay, good. So, well, it's kind of the same comment I have, you know what, clearly you haven't memorized, you know what it is, you play very securely. I think, again, at that point, you can now start over. Because I think, just like taking it back to the workshop, you know, is when you buy a car, within, you know, the first few months, you probably have to take it back in for something. And it's always good to look very, very closely at what you're doing to constantly refine what you have. One of the things that I think is very, very important in this whole sonata, but especially in this first movement, is the idea sort of a unifying pulse, meaning that even though tempos change and move around, the thing that unifies one section or that connects one section to another is often that you can hear the change of pulse and that it's clear where things are. Especially, again, this is a whole thing. If I can't hear, you might feel the pulse, but here everything gets a little bit messed up. So sometimes if it's just sound, I don't really know what's connecting one section to the other, and I lose the sense of where the beats are, because that's very, very important. And ironically, sometimes, this is related to that, sometimes the fastest music has to be played more slowly, or at least spread out differently within the beat. Because I feel like sometimes your notes are even too fast for the tempo that you're playing in. And I can't hear, again, just the steadiness of a real pulse, even within a section. An example of this, in case we don't get to it, but I think we'll just maybe even start with it, is really understanding how these odd 13s are divided out within one beat. And if you just kind of play them instinctively, all I hear is like, I hear nothing. And it's not that you're not playing it. That's the whole thing, is that you're actually playing it. So we should hear that. And how do you do that is play those notes as far apart from each other as you possibly can while not losing the unifying pulse, right? So let's just try that. I'll just give you a tempo. Like, let's say this is your tempo. It's a little slow. So you're finishing your last note before you should. So let's do it even slower. Like, this note should be right on top of this one, right? Okay, now, can you not just go, can you feel each note? Now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Good. Are you practicing? That's too fast. So that's also too fast. Let's practice like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4. Good. If your goal is to redistribute the notes between each other in the beat, then they have to be perfectly equidistant from each other. So you have to be very, very even. That's what you're looking for. So start again. 1, 2, 3. That's very even. Okay, now do that with the left hand, just slightly. Just this one. Don't even bother with that. Now, the other thing is to be careful about grouping with your thumb. You don't want to do that either, right? You want to think of these as 13 notes where this is no more important than any other one. That's the danger. That's kind of what's happening. Yeah. So always remember, pulse, beat, this type of distribution has to transcend the physical grouping of a passage, meaning that it's easy to kind of figure this out in fours, right? Because you're grabbing for this thumb, but or even the top, right? Try not to do that. In fact, try to do the opposite. Try to really kind of reach into the middle notes that mean less to you, and then suddenly this whole thing will make a little more sense. Okay, let's think about the middle notes, the less important notes to you. Try not to go. You know what? A good exercise is to displace that. Is like da 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 da, like to just start somewhere else in your mind. Good. Now start here. Da 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 da. Now group in 5. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. You can. That's a good way to practice too. Is move where you are emphasizing. Don't just practice it one way, because. But what happens? It's not your hand either. It's up here. It's like your brain is assigning importance based on what is getting you through the passage, rather than trying to make everything of one gesture. So that's why I always think it's really great to have a goal when you're doing any kind of practicing. Like, so your goal here is clarity and redistribution of notes, right? So in order to do that, you have to make up all these different types of exercises to achieve that goal. Now, your second goal after you've done that may be to try to play this all mezzo forte without screaming too much. So let's add that to the mix, just these two. But if we're practicing, what are we going to do? Slowly, yes. Okay, piano. Good. Okay. So anyway, we won't spend the whole lesson on doing that, but that is something that was really important because, again, it just sounded like almost nothing. Okay, good. So the other thing that you want to think about is overall kind of a dynamic scale, not only to the movement, but to the whole piece. Meaning that if your loudest sound comes somewhere in the first third of the first movement, then you've already given away something of what might happen later. You know, you always want to think about not only this movement in itself, but then the context of what you're building. And the last movement is pretty loud, right? And you want that to be something different than what we've heard before. So there are times when you get so loud that not only is it becomes unclear, but you've also may never be able to surmount that, you know? So it's really important to look at the dynamic structure of the whole movement and then of the whole sonata. Of course, you're learning this primarily right now. But even such, is this the loudest part of the piece? No. In fact, within these passages, that's where the fortissimo is marked. So what happens is you get so loud here because there's so much aggregate sound, you couldn't get louder here, so this actually dropped down. And that's the opposite of what he wants. So always think that the destination of the dynamic is the most important. And you may even think, but look at this how it goes. Maybe that fortissimo isn't the highest part of that, because it even gets louder. So maybe the highlight, maybe the destination is later. So that all tells us that this cannot be as loud as it is. So that's and those kinds of decisions you should be doing at a desk. So the other really good way to practice, for me it ends up being on airplanes, but like for most people it could be at a desk or away from the keyboard, and that is just mapping out how you see this movement. Because if you just sit here and throw the score on piano and just try to play, pretty soon there's no real direction. You're just kind of negotiating how the piano is reacting to you. It loses a lot of intent. And what you need is intent before you start practicing. And I think, you know, again, to organize practice, it is good to have a goal. So maybe tomorrow's goal, when you start this, will only be to re-examine dynamic structure within the movement. You shouldn't say, oh, my goal is to make everything perfect, or my goal is to make everything better. That's not good enough. It's not specific enough. If you have a specific task, like making this different than this, which I don't think it is, I think that actually doesn't sound as intense as your opening, and that's the fortissimo and that's the forte, right? So again, if you can figure out all of those things and say, even pick the high point of the movement, and that everything builds to or comes away from that, I think you'll have a better understanding of how you want to play it. So thought before action is really a good thing for life, I think. But let's just start a little bit again. We'll take some of these concepts and try to use them. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to say about just kind of the unifying pulse. What's really important, I think, in this piece, the nice thing, it's mostly in 4, which is great because, you know, 4 is the most kind of stable thing. He changes it apparently here and there. But if there is no unifying pulse, the other thing that I lose is a difference between 4s and 3s and 6s, where they're kind of grouped into these different patterns, and they all start to kind of coalesce and sound the same. And so you really want, it's kind of like Brahms is like that, like where the rhythmic distribution is so important to the content. It's almost more important to the emotional content than the structure. But I think in this case it's both. You know, so 3s become 4s, 6s becomes 5s. You know, in order for us to notice those differences, it has to have a steady pulse. So reevaluate that as well. Take small sections and practice just to know where steady is. Because I think, again, things really start to rush. Like this is even, I think, a different tempo than what you started with. And then this is, when you kind of went in the soft, it was a different tempo than what your original tempo was. Not that there can't be shades of tempo, that's a whole different thing, but it has to kind of come from a little consideration. So let's restart, and our goal right now, just now, is for there to be a difference between forte and fortissimo. So what would be a good way, if I were not here, and you were like, okay, I need to make fortissimo sound different than forte, what could you do?
Like in the practice room?
Yeah, alone, when no one's judging you, like now. Compare to dynamics. So where would you start?
Start from
Okay, you start from the top? You can try that. What if you did the opposite? What if you start from the loudest point? What do you want this to sound like?
this interruption.
Okay, why don't you play this bar? Do you hear that sound roll? Do it one more time. Okay, this cannot be more intense than that. So start the first part. Okay, now, did that sound different out there? Did anyone answer us? I can't even see. Did that sound different? Was there a difference between forte and fortissimo? Let's do it again. Play this for them. Play this. Does that translate to you out there? Yes, I got one response. Good. So that's something, right? But I think before you started just, right? Now, what I don't want you to lose in a softer dynamic is because you started kind of angry or whatever you want to say. But so that is not what I'm trying to take away. What I'm trying to just show you is that you can have that intensity, and sometimes it's more crazy when it's like brewing, but not overtly there. You know, like when somebody's really angry at you, and you know, but they're not telling you. It's like, yeah, that's what this is. Yeah. Here, they're telling you. Okay, I've had enough, but okay, not here. Okay, now think again of, here, we'll just work with this for now. That this exists in like what we might call the sound bubble. The bubble in this case being a forte. At any time, did something pop out kind of almost too extremely in the bubble? And if so, where? For me, it was here. It was before this. What, you know, that actually is supposed to kind of come out, right? That's a goal. So if you almost think that it's kind of going to this. But all of this, again, should not come out of the, it should never sound like this, right? So one of the things that's happening is that your pedal, if it's too deep, is magnifying the bubble. It's making it bigger. So you want to use the most pedal when you want the sound at its biggest. And when you want to control it, you have to be a little bit more prudent about how much pedal you use. Start again. Okay, now you're within the bubble, but I think you've lost something. I think you've lost a little bit of maybe the anger or the demonic nature of this statement. What is another way, outside of volume, that you could express a little more darkness? The dotted rhythm? Like, what do you mean?
Like to be more, I don't want to say shorter, but more sharp.
Sharper? Okay, that's definitely one way. What about voicing or color? What is missing? It could be sometimes the depth, right? The depth of this, the tone of this, the sound of this. So if everything is, or just up there, it's bright, it's kind of clear, it's not as threatening, right? There has to be something else. So within that sonic bubble, I think you still can play around with color and voicing. Before we bring down your right hand, let's bring up the low part of your left hand. Yeah, so what you're trying to do, if you're trying to play for extremes, is you're trying to play out here, not here, right? And so if everything, or just slowly up here, and this is an accompaniment. I don't think this is an accompaniment at all. I think this is a direct conflict to this. Right? So I think you need to play it up, and maybe you don't need to play top, top. It's bottom, top. And it starts to change around here, right? Where you then have this, everything is coming together in this register. So that's a critical bar, and that's a change of color, and that kind of gets you to this point. So another way to think of creating intensity or creating differences within your forte bubble is to change the way you're voicing things. It's not just about, well, this is the most important voice, so it should be louder. They all have a place, right? Let's try it again. Okay, so one last thing is, in this tempo, whatever tempo you pick a quicker tempo if you want, you can do whatever you want. Never push. Feel like it's hard for you to go forward. Like you want to go forward, but something's like pushing back on you, pushing back on your chest. You feel the resistance. This is talking about resistance in water. It's the same thing. You need more resistance, especially in your left hand. Okay, that sounds like, especially here. Because if you go, yeah, yeah, da, 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 you're losing the tension. Again, don't do it with volume. It's starting to all creep up a little bit loud. So remember that, we'll do it one more time, and then we're going to move on. But the last thing I will also say that is when you reduce the volume, you don't necessarily want to reduce the front of the hammer sound, right? Because this is very, I mean, it's hammered in some ways, right? Like you can't be, it's not that type of progression. So, however you terrace the volume, don't lose the the aggressiveness of the hammer strike. It doesn't have to be loud, you just have to hear the strike. Good. So how's one other thought? And I know you said to make it more dramatic, you would sharpen or make the 16th note faster. What if you played it exactly as a 16th note and not as a 32nd note? So feel a little bit more tension in that note. Don't think it's easy to but it's still a little fast for that. Okay, that's the 4-3 relationship that I think I'm missing. And so when we talked about, again, the unifying pulse and that you are able to then show the difference between 4 and 3, I think I can hear it now. I have a better chance of hearing it now than I did when it was like kind of 4 and kind of 8-ish, maybe 6, I don't know what. But good, okay. Can you play here? It's kind of the same thing where you're trying to show two things at once, right? The and then but in the grand scheme of things, the 16th note falls very close to the triplet. It doesn't fall far close to this one. It falls back. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 3, 4. You know? Yeah, 16th note is too fast. It's almost like a grace note. Yeah. Okay. Like as an exercise, play it as a triplet with intensity. You hear that? You hear that? Now move it very slightly to the right. And it's too far. It's too far to the right. Okay. Now, what do these things mean? Those little. Where is? What does it mean? This little downward hairpins here. Dropping. Like how? If you were going to play just the left hand, what should it sound like? That's good. I don't hear that when you play the right hand. And I think it's because the right hand just kind of gets in the way. So do the left hand again. Like it could also be not like this. That sounds like a grace note. That's not what yeah, okay? Now, very lightly, almost like you can't hear it, put the right hand with it. Okay, now, a little quicker. Okay, can the right hand, play the right hand by itself? Okay, yeah, so that diminution, or well, the gradation is on a different timetable than this, right? It shouldn't be da-da. It's kind of mirroring each other. But now that you've heard them separately, see if you can operate them independently. Good. Now when this happens, what voice is this for? Right, but what's happening is I hear da-da, da-da, I hear the top. Okay, if you were going to practice that at home, what would you do?
First, two hands. Can you try here?
So, what I always do first is completely take it apart, just isolate the thing you want to hear. Because again, it's not necessarily that your hand isn't doing it, but you don't have in your brain the correct information to send to your hand yet, because you've only heard this all together in a context. So what really helps me is if you create in your brain one little neural pathway that is assigned to hearing da-da, da-da, da-da. Do that. Do it again. And I even hear that between the three of them, you're kind of making it like that. That could be your idea too. Of course, I think it might be the opposite, but whatever. So you can do whatever you like that in that way. But now you have an idea of what that is supposed to be like. Now let's do that. Let's do the left hand just by itself. Okay. How about those two voices together? Da-da. Okay. Now alone, can you just hear this? So what intensity do you want this? Do you want this exactly equal to this? Do you want it less? Do you want it more? More? Okay. Do it again. No, just. Okay. Now all of it together. See it? But do it even more slowly. And before you start, think about what you just did. Kind of access all that information. That's a breakthrough moment, because that means your brain hasn't figured out how to synthesize all that information. So what do? Back up. Go back to 2. Go back to doing 2. Maybe do this one and the top. Okay. Now try to add the other one. Or maybe just do these 2. It's getting better. You know, so anyway, then you would, to me, that's how you practice things. You take them apart to their most basic things and try to create separate channels in your mind. Your brain will then start trying to send all 3 separate signals to your hands and confuse the hell out of them, and that's what just happened, right? Because your hands are going, oh wait, well that's too much information. But pretty soon, it's going to get really easy, really fast. That is a shortcut, in my opinion. The one thing that I would say, in my world, I think the most important thing is da-dum, ba-dum, 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 but as kind of the primary guide of this voice. This, to me, is going to be heard because it's high, so I would actually almost concentrate more on, because here it's introduced, and it's, you know, here, and then you have that, right? Then you have only that to worry about. So that's just my opinion. You don't have to play it that way, but I would. Now, so can we, let's put this all together, and then we're going to jump to another section, but start it over, and this is now your destination. Let's play it under tempo. Just pick any tempo, but it should be slower because you are practicing to retain all of that information and detail. Look at it. Don't look at your hands. You don't need your hands. Now I feel like you kind of reached that, more or less. That's good. You know, again, just for me, this needs to be separated a little. That is not as important as showing this. It's kind of more contrapuntal than vertical. I think you need to think about that. Let's just move on to give us something. Oh, so here, why don't you play at your tempo right from there? Better with staying with me. I'm just doing half bars. front of that, really on the front. And in fact, kind of anticipating that. But do you see how much ahead you're getting? So I'm not saying that you have to be like a metronome, although I'm being like a metronome. But it has to have some relation to the overall tempo. Like if it moves forward, you also have to say, I am intentionally moving forward. It's not just falling forward because it's easy or it's fun and it's like really fast and cool. Or you're just letting it go. You're letting it rip. I don't think that's appropriate. And if you want to push it forward, it has to be done with the unifying pulse. And that's my whole thing to you is like really figure out how you're dividing out these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, because it's the exact same thing. You know, it shouldn't be really hard. The only interruption is here, and I feel like this badam is also one where you move through it. You know, think about the opposite. Like spreading it out more, but you know what you should not do? You should not stop hearing sixes in the bars where there aren't any. In fact, you should still hear the yeah, so then you'll still have that pulse because it starts right up again here. Can you try that? Without me. That's better. Now, again, I am not trying to put you in a box or make you a robot, so you will have to then figure out what these three mean in conjunction with each other, but the pulse is better. Now let's go from here, and then let's hear this, and up to here. Another part, right, where it kind of was more or less wherever you wanted to play everything. And I think that you really have to think about the expressivity of being in one time. Because suddenly all of these notes that were pushed will be more meaningful to you. And the other thing is that we just need to hear them. And we don't, because they tend to go by that fast, really fast. Also, these four things, it's really built off of that very first strike, right? Ya da da da. It's not da 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 da, or ya da da da, or something like this. Ya da da da. Wa da da da. So that'll also ground you in the position of all of those fours, you know, so that you're not kind of pushing. Can you try it from here? And then, you know, move through this. It says to move through this, but again, hear what the pulse is. Move the pulse, not the notes. That was a real stringendo to me, because I still hear the pulse, and it's so exciting that way. Otherwise, it sounds like a mess, and suddenly we're in a different pulse. Yes. Okay, really good. That was really good. See, it took like seconds of your life, not any trouble at all.
Trying to memorize the movement.
Yeah, of course, you have deadlines and stuff, so it's difficult, but great. Let's look at page 27, page 10. It's the same thing. You're kind of rushing through certain beats, especially these. Can you try this? However you do, but it has to go into. It sounds like bam bam bam. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bam. A little more. Do it very evenly, very slowly. Can you do 2 groups of 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's where it is. Da, 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 da. And try slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Good. Do it again. Do a little faster. Da, 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 da. Let me be eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 1. That's it. Right? And so the whole idea is to play those notes slower within the beat. Because again, it's growing. Like if you go, it's preempted the whole bigness of it. Good, keep going. Yeah, you get that. You can, but that's all better, all better. And you can grow. Okay, that's really what I want to say about that. So again, is there an accelerando or? Yeah, I would say it's not like accelerando to presto, right? It's just within the context of this whole thing, it's moving forward. A stringendo is kind of like a pressing forward, but not necessarily a change of tempo. Like, just think of all of these things, unless he really marks a different tempo change, that it's shades of the same tempo. It's not a different tempo, it's a shade of the same tempo. So can we just play all of this? And the other thing we're gonna try to do is make that the fortissimo. We're just gonna hit that down. We didn't stop, but I want this to not be louder than that, okay? Try. Yeah. So at some point, I think you kind of leveled off in the stringendo. So maybe if you want this to be that fast, maybe you kind of hold it back just slightly. It kind of changed tempos and it stayed there. That's one thing. I think you got just slightly too loud, not too intense, but a little too loud dynamically. You're depending on this like little diminuendo to save you, but that shouldn't, just be aware of that. It shouldn't be like your crutch. It should only be like, okay, I'm gonna get a little bit less, but it still should be forte. Don't go to piano. You're losing your intensity. But because I think you do that because it's already too loud. You know? The whole thing should build over this entire, like, what is it, 20 bars. It shouldn't feel like you've reached a section and then you're reaching another section and you're reaching another section. It should be an evolution of the material. Okay, one last time, can you just, yeah, and the last thing is, count eighth notes in your head. Don't get faster here. So really stay in the pulse. Too stuck, you can find a way to press more. So those are things that you have to decide those things, but that's a baseline, consistent kind of rendering of it. It doesn't have to sound like that, but you will figure that out. Good. Yeah, we talked about where the fortissimo is, the clarity of that. This is another page that I think you should just work on in terms of steadiness and clarity. This in particular, you know, that. Can you actually play this page? Yeah. So, what is your primary voice here also? Okay. It's a little bit hiding all of the stuff up here. How would you practice that?
First.
For the right hand, yeah.
Just for the right hand?
Yeah.
First.
What is that for?
To make sure the notes are clear.
To make sure the notes are clear? Does it help you?
It will help.
Good. If you want clarity, what should be happening? What should not be happening?
Rush.
The notes shouldn't, yes, the notes shouldn't be too close to each other, right? So let's devise an exercise to make sure that they're far apart. How about if you play the bottom note staccato? Good, and not fast. So you know what you're doing? If you play this, your brain is learning big groups of material. It is not learning the distance between these two 16th notes. That's how detailed you have to figure it out first. It's not going to take you a long time. You're very quick. I know. I just see you work, and it's like you get it. But you have to slow yourself down. You have to really take the time. Like, okay, the real problem is not up here. It's here. Ya, da, 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 ya, da, da, da. And then you think, am I internalizing yum, dum, the distance between these two notes? The notes aren't the problem. It's the distance is wrong. Think about that. Don't get faster. Good. Do you have the patience with yourself to even play it slower than that? That's right. Good. Now, can you also do it where it's in a different dynamic, like fortissimo? Good. How about one voice is fortissimo, one is not? How about the opposite? That was a little harder, right? So you might need more time with that one. But the thing is, you play it until you stumble, and then you know what your brain hasn't considered. If you want this all to be kind of equally considered, but in its own place, you have to figure out what the problem is. So it's not enough to say it's kind of uneven, or it's just not together with this, or something's wrong, because all you're going to do is practice it all together in context, and nothing is going to get really better. But when you break it down like this, I guarantee you that's the shortcut to making it, I think, understood in your head. Okay, so that was, I didn't mean to start, I kind of wanted to just get this page out. So now I'm not going to talk about that. But can you now go back to tempo and just, what I want you to do is, like, you do this, but for 2 bars, but think pulse, think dynamic bubble, the forte kind of runs all the way through that part, but and doesn't really abate until here. So that's another question, like when you're terracing this whole page, what is the high point of your forte? So let's just do the whole page, and then we're going to have to stop. Yeah, do it in your tempo. Where does the calmando start? Where the diminuendo starts, which is here, right? Not here. So again, look at the periods, right? You gotta, at least, before you change things, you have to experiment with what's actually there. Just to see if it works, just to see. For me, also, like, maybe it's a little bit on the dry side, but that's another thing. Good. I actually think holding that forte out is more interesting. Good. Yeah, and we talked about this, so, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for playing. Good luck.
So on behalf of you started the festival really well.
Oh, good.
Thank you.